Have you ever had one of those days where you feel hopeless and you wake up and you just feel like you're upset, you're sad, and you don't want to do anything that day? We all have those days. It happens to everyone. But normally what happens to people who aren't suffering from depression is that they can get over it and the next day they will be fine. Those suffering with depression go through that every single day. 25 million Americans will have episodes of depression this year alone, and only about half of them will receive treatment. Because of this, I've chosen to talk to you guys about depression. I'm going to talk kind of like what it is. There's a lot of misconceptions about it, the causes, symptoms, and what you can do to help somebody that you know suffering from depression. So there are many types of depression. The one that I'm going to be focusing on it's commonly called clinical depression, but it's also called major depression, major depressive disorder, or just simply depression. It's the more serious form. And basically, it is considered a mental illness. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is a big organization, they have a webpage titled What is Depression? And on it, they define depression as a lifelong condition in which periods of wellness alternate with recurrences of illness. So what that is saying is that it's not something that just goes away. It is something that you can get better, and you can have periods of, feeling better and feeling happier, and then just like that, it's gone, and you're back to your depressed state again. It's a disorder of the brain, which is what makes this a mental illness, and it's actually, unfortunately, one of the most common mental disorders in the United States, as well as the world. The causes of it are a little unknown, but they also vary from person to person. So what scientists have decided now is that they're actually a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and psychological factors. So basically what that means is the genetic side of it is it runs in families. They think that there might be a gene out there that makes people more susceptible or more prone to having depression. So they're currently doing a lot of studies into that. But what that is saying is that it will run in families. And so if you have a parent, a grandparent, or a great-grandparent that's had depression, it could run in you as well and into your children. The biological side of that is that in your brain, like your actual brain chemistry, you have neurotransmitters, which are naturally occurring brain chemicals. These have been found to actually play a key role with depression. So when these become out of balance, it leads to depression symptoms. Another way that your biological body is basically causing this disease is with your hormones. A lot of women, especially when they're going through puberty and then menopause later on in life, have a big change in the balance of hormones, and that is actually a big cause of depression because your hormones are fluctuating at such a high rate that your body just doesn't know how to handle it and your brain doesn't know how to handle it. And lastly, which is one of the most common things associated with depression, is the stressful situations or traumatic events. So obviously if you've lost a loved one recently, or if you're in a violent relationship or anything like that, those are going to have severe psychological impacts on you and are going to cause you to have depression-like symptoms. So what exactly are the symptoms of depression? You hear about it a lot and you hear people say they're depressed or they're sad, but what does that mean? So it's important to note the severity and duration actually varies from person to person. One person may be more affected by depression than others. There might be some people out there, I know one of my best friends had it and she dealt with it fine, whereas one of my other friends had it and didn't deal with it very well. So the duration and the severity do vary. The Mayo Clinic, which is actually a big component and proponent of depression, they actually define depression on their webpage with listing the most common symptoms. So they're saying that their definition of depression is that it is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and a severe loss of interest. So that is two of the big symptoms of depression, is the persistent feeling of sadness and a severe loss of interest. It is important to note the persistent word in there because human emotions, you can feel sad at any point during the day and get over that. It's when you're persistently and you're constantly feeling upset. Some other symptoms are hopelessness or pessimism. You'll see a lot of depressed people just feel like they have nothing to live for anymore, which then goes into the suicidal thoughts. A lot of depressed people will have suicidal thoughts, and they will think about ending their lives because they just have this feeling of worthlessness and helplessness. A lot of them also suffer fatigue and decreased energy, which then leads to the lack of interest. When you're tired, you don't feel like doing anything. So people who are suffering from depression, when they're feeling this way, they don't want to do the hobbies they once found enjoyable, so they have a lack of interest in that. They can't sleep, or they sleep too much, and they don't want to eat, or they eat too much. Everything, it just fluctuates. They also have trouble concentrating or slowed speaking or thinking, and some of them, this is actually not a common symptom, but it can occur, is angry outbursts over small matters. So they can actually become a little bit bipolar from having this disorder. So after hearing all that, that's a lot to take in. So what do? You just found out one of your friends has depression. Is there a cure? Like, can you treat it? What can you do for this disorder? There is treatment. And the good thing is that a lot of people suffering from depression do go through treatment and are eventually cured of this disease. And the two most common ways of treatment are medication and psychotherapy. So the medication I'm not going to focus too much on because that is obviously a big part of our lives every day. We hear about antidepressants, the good causes, the bad causes of them, and whatnot. So all I'm going to say about that is that there are antidepressants out there, and there are, the ones that are prescribed by your doctor that will help you balance out the hormones in your brain and like the neurotransmitters and everything like that. Other than that, there are some natural remedies, but those obviously have not been regulated or anything by the FDA. Psychotherapy is actually what I wanted to focus on. This is a fancy word for talk therapy, and there are two different kinds of it. So there's the cognitive behavioral therapy and interpersonal therapy. So the cognitive behavioral is this is mainly for people that are going through the really bad pessimism stage of depression. So this helps them kind of restructure that negative thought, and it helps them learn to look at things more positively as a whole. So instead of going through everyday life thinking of things negatively and going, oh, I don't want to do that, I really don't want to do this, gosh, this sucks. Instead of doing that, it's helping them rethink, well, this is a learning experience. I can do this. This is positive. Helps them kind of reroute that part of their brain, basically. And the interpersonal therapy is the one that you've probably mostly heard of. This is basically talking to people and helping them kind of understand and work through troubled relationships. So it's basically it's a therapist. And this is the one that really helps you work through if, the reason you're depressed is because you're having problems with your parents or problems with, a spouse or a loved one of any sort. You will go through the interpersonal psychotherapy, and that will help you get over that. And then the last, this is a very controversial treatment plan. It's electroconvulsive therapy, which, as many of you know, is shock therapy. Now, researching this, I was just as shocked because I was like, why would you ever do that? All the negative things about it. It's actually gotten a lot better over the years. And it's only for people who have severe depression episodes, and it's for select people. Normally, it is actually for the people who have psychosis. So these are the people who are going through depression, but they're having hallucinations and visions, and they're seeing things that they normally don't see. Basically, it's for individuals who have a very, very severe form of depression. And so they will undergo this electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy. And it has been noted that now it has become a lot safer. There's not as many negative side effects of it. Memory loss can be temporary. It's just one of the main side effects of it, but it does tend to come back after a couple weeks. So that is another area that is actually being looked into for treatment for this disorder. So after hearing all this, it is a lot to take in. So what can you do to help? How can you help someone that you know, a loved one who has depression? There's not a whole lot, honestly. What you can do is you can offer emotional support and patience. One of the key things to dealing with someone with depression is you have to understand they can't get over it. It's not something that they can just wake up one day and feel happy. It is a constant struggle for them to get out of bed, to wake up, to go to class, to do things, to be social. It is a huge, huge undertaking for them to do this. So talk to them. You really need to just sit down, talk to them, figure out a way that you can try and help them, and listen. Listen to everything that they tell you. even when you don't feel like it, because they're going to need you a lot during this time period. One of the things I found interesting when I was doing my research on this was one of the websites I looked at with the Mayo Clinic, they actually said to point out realities. So whenever individuals get very negative and very pessimistic, you'll notice that the logical side of things tends to kind of disappear. They're talking really negatively. They're saying that, oh, this happened because this and this, and they're not being logical about the way they're connecting things. So what the Mayo Clinic has proposed is to point out these realities, but don't dismiss feelings. If they're telling you, I feel like this, I feel like that, don't be like, oh, well, you need to get over it. Don't point that out, but just point out, hey, it'll get better. You're working through it. This is a major thing you're going through. You're going to learn so much. And once you get out, you're going to be great. That being said, suicidal comments is a major, major issue when dealing with depression. It is important and vital to never, ever ignore suicidal comments, even if it's just the littlest thing or joke about, oh, if I ended this now, it'd be a lot easier. Even if they laugh about it. If they are saying things like this, it is because they are thinking things like this. And to do that, you're going to have to help them out. There is a website, it's called the National Suicide Prevention. It also has a lifeline. You can help them contact that and get them the help that they need. It is a phone number that they can call at any time if they're feeling like this. Lastly, the number one thing you can do as a friend, as a loved one, anything like that, is to try to keep them active. A lot of times with depression, you want to curl up in a box and go away from the world. You think the world is evil, nothing feels right, everything's hopeless. You want to keep them active. Even inviting them out, hey, do you want to go on a hike with me? Hey, we're going here, do you want to come with? Try to get them up and keep them active, because if they're surrounded by people who are, having positive feelings, they're going to feel positive feelings, and it's going to make them feel a little bit better. Dealing with depression isn't easy. It is not easy for the person suffering from it or the person watching them suffer through it. The sad thing is that 6.7% of Americans will experience depression each year. That is just in 1 year, and that's only Americans. 6.7% they will suffer major depression. That being said, it is important that since this is such a prevalent major disorder in American society, that we educate ourselves on it and we make sure that we know what we can do to help and everything about it. All right, thank you.